Thank you so much. Lovely being here. I would start by sharing my slide and then I'll dive in. So let's see if you guys can see my PowerPoint slide. You should be able to. Do you guys see the slide? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And as employers, we often focus on wages when budgeting for new hires, but there is a whole other side to employment cost that is just as important, which is called mandatory employment related costs in Ontario. Today's session is designed to help you understand what MERCs are, why they matter, how they impact your bottom line. We'll break down each key component so that you can confidently manage your payroll, stay compliant with Ontario's regulation, and plan your hiring strategy more effectively. Whether you're a small business owner, an HR professional, or looking to sharpen just your knowledge about this presentation will give you the tools and clarity you need. So let's dive right in. So let's discuss what are MERCs. MERCs refers to mandatory employment related costs. These costs are required by our Ontario law to ensure that employers and employees are being fair in their statutory costs. This provides support to social programs and allow the workers protections in regards with their employment insurance, their health and safety, their health standards, and all the other things that are required at a workplace. Why are MERCs important? MERCs are important to ensure compliance with employment laws. That's the baseline. But while it is important for us to meet the employment law, it also provides us access to social programs for employees, thus boosting their culture, their morale at work, and ensuring that you create a safe space for your employees. It also affects your hiring and your payroll costs, including your total budget for payroll. We've talked so much about MERCs, and now what are those MERCs? What are those key components for MERCs? In this session today, we will be diving into each of these MERCs, but let me give you a little bit of an overview. So the first MERC that we will be discussing is called Canada Pension Plan, CPP, as we all know. The next one would be employment insurance, which is commonly called EI. There is a third one, which is not so common. It's called employer health tax. We'll be discussing about that. Then there is Workplace Safety and Insurance Board. Again, something which is not mandated for all businesses, so maybe not as common as we think. Vacation pay and public holiday pay. So let's start with Canada Pension Plan. So Canada Pension Plan is a federal retirement pension plan that provides income to Canadians after retirement, as well as disability and survivor benefits. This currently is needed to help employees build their retirement savings and ensure financial stability in case of a disability or death. Employers currently have a responsibility to match employee contribution. In 2025, the current rate for CPP is 5.95% of pensionable earnings. A max contribution per employee could look like $3,867.50. Again, when I am giving you any presentation numbers or a max gap, it is dependent on the annual payroll that a company has. So it is subjected to change. I will share at the very end a source list where I would encourage employers to go and check which category they fall in and what would be their rate and what would be the max allowance for each of these MERCs. Now moving on to the next one, we have employment insurance. Talking about what an employment insurance is, it's very similar a program like CPP. It's a federal program that provides temporary income support to unemployed workers as well as maternity, parental, or sickness benefits. So anytime we're going on mat leave, paternity leave, or even if we are in between jobs, we are laid off, this is the pool of money that our federal resources use to provide us that financial stability in that uncertain time of duration. Why it matters? It matters because it offers financial protection to employees during periods of job loss or life events. Currently, employers pay 1.4% or 1.4 times the employee premium. Again, the premium rate in 2025 is 2.212%, which again is dependent on which payroll category you fall in. The max contribution varies annually, also dependent on the salary of the individual and how much and in which section of the payroll the employer is. Moving on to the next one. So in my introduction, I did say this is not as common. So we are going to dive into something which is not very common here. It is called employer health tax benefit. Not all of us are aware with this because this is used to fund our province healthcare system, and it is right now eligible for a handful of employers. So the primary condition to meet that is that you must have 1 million plus payroll in place. So it is a provincial tax system in Ontario, which is used to fund the province healthcare system. It supports the public healthcare and is mandatory for most employers in Ontario. It is applied to only Ontario employers. It is a graduated tax based on the payroll size. So if you are at 1 million point, that's where it starts. And then if you go on to 1.5, 1.75, 2, 2.5, 2.15, 2.75, and similarly, it goes in increments. And what would be the tax benefit for an employer after this is also briefly explained in the support, which I would be sharing soon. It ranges from anywhere between 0.98% to 1.95%. Most of us who work in not-for-profit would not see this, as this would require a for-profit payroll of 1 million. Thus, lots of not-for-profit do not see this in their payroll. To the next one, we have Workplace Safety and Insurance Board, WSIB. That's another one which is not as common. It helps the Ontario workplace insurance system to provide benefits to workers if they are injured on the job and helps them return back to work. This is, though, compulsory for occupations and employers which have hazardous environment, including construction, mining, even healthcare. Some of those would be a typical example of the employers who would have WSIB in their organization. For those employers who may not have WSIB in place, would require a third-party alternative insurance in check, which is required by Ontario. So that's another thing, which is not part of the costs, but that is what an employer must have to be all set up for an employment purposes, which we can discuss if there are further questions. Premium would be based dependent on the industry and the claim history of an employer. Class-specific rates apply. So when we say class-specific, a WSIB board decides which occupation falls in which class, in which industry, and what would be the rate for each one of them. Again, that would require a little bit of research to know exactly as an employer which category we fall in and how much should our WSIB premium be for a certain job class that we have in our organization. Next, we're going to talk about vacation pay. This is the fun side that every employee loves. Vacation is a statutory entitlement that ensures employees receive paid time off. So for those employees who are permanent in nature, an employer provides them vacation pay, or those who are not permanent, they still have to pay a vacation, which is more like accumulated wage that they provide to an individual in lieu of vacation. Why vacation pay matters? Because it promotes employee well-being and is also a legal requirement under Ontario's Employment Standard Act. Currently, according to the ESA, which is the Employment Standard Act, an employer must at least have 4% of their gross wage, which is up to 2 weeks, be paid in lieu of vacation or provide vacation, or 6%, which is equivalent to 3 weeks after 5 years. The employer has a choice to either give them vacation time or just pay them in lieu of vacation. The last MERC that we'll be covering is public holidays. Now, public holidays is compensation for employees on some statutory holidays. Ontario recognizes 9 public holidays. Example would be Canada Day, Labour's Day, Christmas. Employer's role is to pay the eligible employee for those 9 public holidays in Ontario. When we say eligible employee, as an employer, you must know an eligible employee would be the one who comes in for a designated shift before the public holiday and after. A designated shift could be something, for example, I'm going to give an example for Canada Day. So let's say Canada Day is on Monday. If the designated shift of an individual was to work on Wednesday and the employee fulfilled their requirement of being here, completed the shift, and the next shift is on Tuesday, post Canada Day, and the employee chooses to show up, the employer is responsible for providing them with the public holiday pay for the day of Monday, which would be Canada Day. I hope that made it a little bit clear. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address that as well. Why it matters? Because it ensures fair compensation and time off for recognized holidays. It is also an opportunity for an employer to realize that these public holidays are given by the law or by the organization in this term to allow the individual to spend some time or get some time off from work. Those who may not have the ability to get time off from work, they do get a regulated wage, which is more than what they would typically make, which is 1.5 times. So, for example, an employee is earning $12 an hour. Just giving you a hypothetical example. On a public holiday, if they choose to work, they will make $12 plus another $6 for every hour that they work. That is called public holidays. Mark. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example through an employer lens. Let's say your employee is earning $40,000 a year. Part of their CPP, according to the 2025 percentage premium wage that we have, would be $2,380. And EI, again, I am taking an example here that they are in a restaurant business, have very less premium wages, and there we go. And the EI has 886. EHT, as you'll see, there is a beautiful hyphenated that I had in because, again, if this restaurant business has a payroll of 1 million and more, they would be then paying employer health tax, which is $400. Then it would be WSIB. Again, for health and safety, they would be giving 800. Vacation pay would come out to $1,600. Public holiday pay, again, this is an aggregate for whole annual, would come out closer to $1,400, and their total MERCs could be up to $7,466. So as you see, if an employee is earning 40,000, sorry, I apologize, I need to go back. If an employee is earning 40,000, you will see there is a substantial amount of MERCs that an employer is responsible for paying. Thus, budgeting for MERCs is extremely important. And as a thumb of rule, I would suggest allocate about 14 to 18% of the wages for MERCs. That should cover all the cost of designated MERCs, but you will see these costs will vary depending on the region, the industry, and also the job class of an individual. As an employer, our obligation is to understand WSIB and ensure that we are following our EHT obligations. That means that you have more than 1 million of payroll, we are obligated to pay this and get a tax reimbursement for it later, which again is something that Spark can assist you with if you are interested. Next, we'd be talking about employer responsibilities. So we learned that there is a lot which is mandatory, and as part of us being employers, we have certain responsibilities. One of those would be starting by registering with CRA and WSIB board, making timely remittance, providing records and statements whenever required, and maintaining an accurate payroll documentation. All of these do sound intimidating at first, but for smaller businesses, there are lots of support in the city, including Business Center, organizations like ours who are connected to Employment Ontario, to allow an employer to be successful in meeting all these responsibilities. Next is penalties for non-compliance. If an employer chooses not to follow the MERCs standard, there could be penalties that could come in place. There could be interest and penalties on late payments. They could risk an audit of their business. And of course, there would be reputation damage. Sometimes, and in some industries, if they are connected with a regulatory board and an employer is found to not fulfill their mandatory employment-related costs, they are no longer part of that regulatory board. That means they cannot conduct business, period, till interest and penalties are paid. Lastly, I would discuss some of the available resources. I would highly encourage as an employer for you to go and check out the CRA payroll deduction calculator to better understand where each of your employee would be and what kind of calculation and payroll budgeting you can do. Next, I would recommend Ontario Ministry of Finance. EHT informations would be provided on there. An example of what I'd been saying throughout, 1 million of payroll is something which is very clearly stated, but what needs to go underneath, which industries qualify, what would be the region, what would be the premium, would all be available on that website. WSIB, again, has a premium estimator in there, which allows the employer to estimate and find for a certain job class in a certain job nature, what would be their WSIB premium look like. And lastly, I put Spark Employment Services. So as an employer, know that Spark Employment Services allow and have free resources for our employers to access this information. And if they need any support, we would be happy to assist you with that. And that brings me to the session where I'm opening the floor to you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask and I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Betty, for this beautiful presentation. Do you have any question to ask? Okay. Okay, Jenny, you can go ahead.
Hello. My question is, now it was talking about employees that are full-time. What about contract employees or seasonal employees? Does all of this still apply? And I
Yes.
only see the Q&A, so I don't see your face. So I don't know if
Oh, I will actually stop sharing my screen so that you can see me there.
okay.
There you go. Hi, Jenny. Yes, it is important to follow these for contract and seasonal employees because at the end of the day, what they're looking at is if it's a subcontractor, which is a different employee class, then you're not responsible for mandatory employment related cost. But anyone who has to be on your payroll would follow the same standards. So they will still be entitled to vacation pay, they will still be entitled to public holidays, they will still be entitled to CPP, EI, EHT if you meet that class, and WSIB if your industry is such.
Okay, so basically, if I have someone working a few months here, a few months there, I am responsible for everything. Now, if I hired a company in order to hire somebody, like an
Yes,
administrative assistant, then I would not be
that's
responsible
right.
for that at all.
Exactly. That is true. The other thing would be when you said somewhere here, they work few times here, few times in another month. That again is a gray area, which we would say they could either be freelance or a subcontractor. So, for example, someone you connect with and you give them, I'm giving a hypothetical example of marketing and say, can you do this? Marketing, this is the project I want. Once it's done, this is the wage that we had negotiated. You'll get a project specific amount and it's done. Then they're not on your payroll. You've hired technically a freelancer or a subcontractor. But if you choose to hire someone on your payroll and say that you will be on my payroll on call and I will call you if I have a project, then you are responsible for paying all these MERCs.
Okay, I didn't realize that was actually that's great to know. Thank you.
Welcome.
Those are all my questions for now.
Yeah, no worries.
I also have a question. It's about the WSIB.
Yes.
Which type of businesses are required to register for that?
So any business in regards with risk of health injury, mental injury, is required to have a WSIB. Primarily, if you don't have WSIB, you have to explore a third party insurance company. Most of the employers, rather than going and finding a third party insurance company, they end up going to WSIB and saying, we don't fall into this class. We are from a class which has minimal risk. The premiums for that is negligible, and WSIB offers that as well. So organizations like not-for-profit, they also have WSIBs if they don't have a third-party insurance in place.
Okay. Thank you. And what happens if they fail to register to?
And if they fail to register for WSIB, the tricky part is it only comes in play if someone is actually hurt on the job and they choose to file the complaint. So let's say, knock on the wood, your employee never got hurt, you never had WSIB, doesn't matter. If someone got hurt on the job and now they are requesting payment, the employer would either have to pay it out of their own pocket, or the employee has the ability to go and file a complaint saying, I'm requesting payment, and the employer was not compliant.
Yes, that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, thank
And I see there is a question in the chat.
you. Okay.
Only if live in Ontario, example, we overseas. Jenny, do you mind explaining that a little bit for me?
I'm saying sometimes there could be the virtual assistant, or
Yes.
there could be virtual marketing. Now, because earlier you stated, people in Ontario, is there something that would connect us in our responsibility in that regards?
Yes. Jenny, I would say again, the gray area is it's not where the employee lives, it's where the employer is located. If you are If you have multiple branches, for example, and you have a shop in BC, a shop in Ontario, a shop in Quebec, then each shop would have to follow provincial rules. But if you are centrally located in Ontario and you have virtual assistants overseas, but because you are located in Ontario, you have to still follow all the Ontario laws.
Perfect, thank you.
You're most welcome. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I have another question. I know I'm a bunch of full of questions.
No, it's good.
Is there a minimum time that once we hire somebody, then okay, we have to put this in the process for someone who is new or someone who has been in business for a while?
Yes. So typically, it gives you almost a backlog of 6 weeks that an employer can play in and get them on payroll. But because as small employers and new employers, Ontario understands. So if in that fiscal year you choose to put someone on and realize, oh, this person started in Feb, I'm now in July registering them, I want to backtrack and pay them all. If you do all of that in that same fiscal year, it's completely fine. It only becomes an issue if you have filed your taxes, it didn't happen in the first year, and now in the second year, you're saying, oh, I remember this. You can change your taxes, but then you'll have to pay penalties and fines for that, if that helps.
It does. It does.
Okay, thank you. And I would say, please, regardless, please check out the resources that were listed for each of these MERCs, because these premiums, the rules, everything changes all the time. And as employers, I would highly encourage to please be cognizant of what's coming, what's existing, and we follow it to the point where there is no concerns about is it right, is it wrong. And in case if you guys are ever confused, please feel free to connect back with Spark and be happy to tell you what the current obligations are and to what extent are we meeting those.
Okay. Is there any more questions? No more questions. Okay. Thank you so much, Bati, for this wonderful session and for all the information that you provided. And if you still have more questions, you can direct them to Dwani. And if you can put your email in the
Yes,
chat, please, or on the screen.
I will definitely do that. I can put all my contact details.
Yes, or you can send them to me, kngoma@nobip.ca. And okay.
Actually, do you mind just putting your email? I will also send you the information. Meanwhile, I'm putting my information here too.
Okay, okay, let's just do this. Okay, there you have it. Okay, thank you. Okay, This is done, and you can send your questions directly to Duani, or you can send them to me. And as I said at the beginning, this session has been recorded, and if you want to watch it again, it will be available on our YouTube or on our website. Thank you again, and we invite you to stay connected for upcoming sessions and training opportunity through NOBIP. And I wish you a good day. Thank you. Bye.
You.